Welcome, everyone. Welcome also to our live streamers. As you know, we are in Brussels, so hello from Brussels. Welcome to the European Right to Repair Steel Loading Conference. People are still arriving in Brussels, so we're going to start a little bit later. So please just bear with us for a few more minutes, and we will start shortly. We just wanted to let the live streamers that are live streaming from YouTube, we just wanted to let them know that we need a few more minutes, just so that they know that they are on the right link and everything else. So we are here, we're getting ready. Just bear with us for a few more minutes. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 9:41, so I guess it's time to start. Welcome to everyone who is joining us in Brussels, and welcome also to the people that are joining online, that are live streaming from YouTube. Welcome to this Right to Repair Still Loading conference. As you know, this conference opens this year's edition of Fixfest, the international gathering for community repair this year in Brussels, that will continue with activities throughout the weekend. This conference is organized by the Right to Repair campaign, the European Right to Repair campaign, and you will hear more about that during this first session. We will have a coffee break. In case you didn't have time to get your coffee, we will have a coffee break at 11:20, so don't fret. And please be back on time because we were a little bit late. At 12:30, there will be a vegetarian lunch, so please stay with us. And after that, we will continue with a cardboard and sign workshop, and after that, a little Right to Repair protest stunt. So please stay with us also for that part of the program. That will be at 4 at Place René Cliquet, near Porte de Namur, here in Brussels, for the people here. Also, I wanted to let you know that after every session, there will be Q&A moments. So you have the possibility to, as you can see, you have mics on your table, so you really can just raise your hand and press on the one button that there is on the mic, and we will give you the floor. And also online, if you have questions, you can write them, and we have a team that will let us know. Thank you very much for joining us. I will now give the floor to our moderator, who is Narmin.
Good morning, everyone. So welcome to the first session. Today is really an occasion for us to talk about the campaign that has been led by different stakeholders. And this is why we have a diverse range of change makers who have fought for a better right to repair for our EU consumers. So the idea of this first introductory session is really to discuss the story of what campaign is about, but also what are the different obstacles that the campaigners are facing across Europe and within the EU bubble. So as mentioned by Christina, please feel free to share some questions during the Q&A session. We'll first start with a bunch of presentations from the different stakeholders, and then we'll receive your questions. So Christina, I'll first turn to you, and we'd like to understand a bit better what it was for you to campaign for the European Right to Repair campaign, and also what are the different obstacles you had to face.
Yes, so to present the European Right to Repair campaign. Today, the European Right to Repair campaign has over 100 members from 21 different countries, pushing EU institutions for right to repair. It's maybe a fun anecdote to let you know that the Right to Repair campaign was launched during Fixfest 2019 in Berlin. Maybe actually many of you were there. I wasn't. So maybe you can remember the beginning of the campaign. At the beginning, the campaign was composed by 5 core steering group members who had already campaigned for Right to Repair. And after being launched in 2019, a lot of new members joined, and now we are over 100 members. To let you know about the diversity of the members that compose the campaign, I'm gonna present you the steering group members. You can see, for instance, the EEB, the European Environmental Bureau, which is an environmental NGO working here in Brussels, as, for example, ECOS, which works on ecological standards. But you can also see organizations, charities such as Runder Tisch Reparatur from Germany, or Repair and Share from Belgium, or Restart from the UK, which advocate for the right to repair in a more community-led way. And we also have 2 companies, which are iFixit and Back Market. Back Market, it's an online market for refurbished items. And iFixit, we will hear about iFixit in this panel, so I won't be long there. But it's an interesting company that gives repair guides for free and sells spare parts. So as you can see, we have a big range of diverse actors, from repair activists, environmental activists, and self-repair advocates. when it comes to campaigning at EU level, something that you know, from the Eurobarometer actually, 8 in 10 Europeans agree that manufacturers should be required to make it easier to repair digital devices. This has been proved over and over again. People really do want this. So what's happening at EU level? On paper, right to repair is part of the European Green Deal, because it is part of the European plan to achieve circular economy by 2050. But if we actually look at what has happened after this has been announced as part of the EU Green Deal, it's not so much. It's very little incremental steps. Let me give you an example. You have probably all heard about the universal charger, right? This was a big decision. We're going to have a universal charger. USB Type-C will be the common charging port by autumn 2024, but this will be the case for mobile phones, tablets, and cameras. What about laptops? For laptops, we will need to wait 40 additional months. Why? The planet is on fire. Why do we need to wait 40 additional months? And especially if we look at it, how long have we been talking about the universal charger? For 13 years. The first memorandum of understanding was in 2009. So we've been talking about it for a very, very long time. It's very, very slow. So this is not the real universal right to repair we're asking for, is not really happening at EU level yet. So what do we actually want? What does it mean, this right to repair that we're advocating for? It means good design, fair access, and informed consumers. Let me give you just a few examples. When it comes to good design, we believe that products should be designed in a way that enable for easy disassemble and repair. Very often, and we have a lot of repair activists here, you know more than me, it's super difficult to even just disassemble these devices, even just find the screws or find the right tools to disassemble these items. When it comes to fair access, we mean access to repair information and to spare parts. And this is really not the case. When we say informed consumers, we think that consumers should know at the time of purchase whether a device is repairable or not. In France, as many of you know, there is a repairability index that has been introduced for many products. At EU level, actually, we have been working so much on this week. Our brains are full with this. This has been developed for smartphones and tablets. It's under development. We're still discussing it. But something absolutely crucial has been left out of the criteria to compose this repairability index. And this is the price of the repair, the price of spare parts. We are all consumers. We know if repairing a device is more expensive than buying a new one, we're not going to go for it. So this is not working. This is absolutely, the job is absolutely not done. So these were the points that I wanted to leave you with for the Right to Repair campaign. We will hear more. The takeaway is regulation is simply too slow, and e-waste is growing very, very fast. And when we talk about e-waste, do not just think about these devices that you can see in my little GIF. We're really thinking about all of the waste that is produced before the consumer even sees the product. And you will hear more about this in further presentations.
Thank you, Christina, for this really good overview and the pillars of that Right to Repair campaign. Now I think it will be really interesting to also know a bit more about the environmental angle that some NGOs are actually leading on. In particular, you, Mathieu, from EcoSide, the Environmental Coalition on Standards.
Thank you very much, Namin. So, first of all, I wanted to apologize for keeping that mask. I have a nasty little cold, and I don't want to pass it on to Hugo because I want him to keep only good memories from this weekend. So here we go. So I represent ECOS, which is a network of environmental NGOs and experts who work on environmentally friendly technical standards, policies, and laws. So we make sure that the environmental voice is heard when these standards, policies, and laws are developed because the environmental voice is generally a minority there. So I will focus on what are the impacts of electronics, because what I'm working on for ECOS is a circular electronics. So I try to make sure that ICT products, small appliances, so laptops, smartphones, etc., are more durable, more long-lasting, more repairable. So let's start with a few data about e-waste. So in 2019, it has been estimated that 53.6 million tons of e-waste was produced globally. So as we are in Brussels, I won't count in Eiffel Towers how what this represents. So we'll count it in atomiums. So it represents more or less 21,500 atomiums that are discarded every year in the world of e-waste. I've also made another comparison, which well, is difficult because it's not something which exists, but some people tried to estimate the weight of the Death Star. So I wanted to compare, and actually it's not that much, but I thought that still it's something which might destroy our planet just as well. So because there's another data which is important to mention here, it's what the usage of electronic products represents in what we call our budget of planetary boundaries. So what is this budget? It's what individual should not exceed in terms of consumption if they want to stay within the limits of what our planets provide us every year. So basically, we seriously need to decrease that share that the usage of electronic products represents, because then it only leaves us 60% for food, housing, heating, transportation, and these are very big shares of consumption. So we need to decrease that. And also, yeah, and what Christina mentioned earlier, which is very important, is that if you come back to this data, like that's only what is discarded, but you have to multiply by 10 at least the amount of waste which is produced when manufacturing these products. So it's actually much more than that. And what is the answer to these issues? So circular economy is the answer. So I apologize already for showing you for the umpteenth time this diagram that you might have seen many times already. So it's the Ellen MacArthur's Foundation's diagram on what circular economy is. I will be very quick on this one, just to remind you that, this is supposed to make a cycle around the little tool that you have next to your users. Sorry, it didn't translate well into Google Slides, apparently. So just to remind that repair is in the inner cycle of circular economy. It's also at the top of the waste hierarchy. It's part of prevention. And why is it important to focus on repair, on reuse, rather than just thinking that we will recycle our way out of waste? That's because there are limits to recycling. You consume much more energy. It creates pollution. It results in pollutants. And also, most of the time, when you use recycled materials, it ends up being downcycling, so you produce products that we don't necessarily need. So it's very rare that we are in a closed loop cycle. So basically, when you reuse material for what it was initially intended to be used in the beginning. So we need to focus on prevention, on repair, and on reuse. And what the Commission is currently doing, what the EU institutions are currently working on, and Christina already talked to you about this before, but I wanted to focus on this because this is quite important aspect of our work at ECOS. That for the 5 past years, the the Commission is working more and more in tackling the highest level of the waste hierarchy through eco-design. So basically trying to make products which are tackled through eco-design more long-lasting, more repairable, on top of being energy efficient. Because before eco-design regulation, it was only focusing on energy-related products and on energy efficiency. Now it's shifting towards more inclusion of material efficiency requirements. But it's not enough. Like, for example, for products which are currently covered by material efficiency requirements, you have washing machines, dishwashers, fridges, and you still have this differentiation between professional repairers and end users. So basically, if you are professional repairers, you have access to a list of spare parts. And if you are an end user, like, you have a very limited access to spare parts. So we definitely don't want this distinction between end users and professional repairers. And you also have a lot of power given to OEMs, so to manufacturers, retailers, and importers, to decide who will have access to spare parts. So basically to act as let's say as a barrier to requesting these spare parts. So basically they will be able to decide whether you are a professional repairer or not. You will have to demonstrate that you are a professional repairer because before having access to these spare parts. So there are a lot of limitations like this. I won't go through all of them, but I will leave that task for Hugo. So thank you very much, and I hope you will have a very nice Fix festival.
Thank you so much, Mathieu, for this presentation. I think we really understand also how each of your work complement each other in many ways. And now we'll hear also about how the repair community plays a big role in tackling the issue of e-waste as well. So Hugo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The Restart Project is an organization, a charity that inspires people to repair more by supporting community repair groups around the world. We started in the UK, but we have groups in many other countries, and supporting them to make the most of the products we already have and to help others learn the importance of repair. Learning the importance by taking things apart collaboratively at events that people call repair cafes, restart parties, fix-it clinics, Fixfest, and all kinds of other ways around the world. And the whole point of this is not that alone the community repair will fix the world, but that we can change the way waste is perceived. We can understand that things do not need to be thrown away. They can be fixed, and it can be fun, and we can learn lots by doing it together. So let's keep that in mind, because I'd like to send a message to our legislators, our policymakers, that we are tired. We are tired of having to demonstrate time and time again that it's not enough, because it's not enough. What they're doing is simply not enough, and I'll explain why. First of all, we've been running community repair events for about 10 years now. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary this summer. And we learned many things by doing them. First of all, we learned that we need a universal right to repair. Now, right to repair became a thing thanks to the movement started in the US, where our colleagues iFixit and the Repair Coalition and the work of US PERG and others have helped create this name that now people understand, and it has 80% approval ratings across the world. Whenever you poll people, people want it. It's simple. It's a policy that's inclusive. It's no problem for everyone. There's maybe 4% of people that don't want it, and it'd be lovely to know why. But the problem is, it's not the right to repair. The people that are into repair really think it is. And that's why we talk in terms of a universal right to repair. A universal right to repair is a right to repair for everyone to be able to choose who should repair their products and to make sure that no products end up as waste before their end is really there. What that means in practice is that we need to think that people in community initiatives, people that do it for fun, as a hobby, professionals, people that might be competent but have another job, they all should have the exact same rights as the professional repairers and the professional repairers authorized, as they say, by the manufacturers. This is very simple. It doesn't exclude anyone by including everyone. It's not like we're taking away something by allowing everyone to make the most of repair. We have been doing this for a long time, and obviously there's plenty of stories of how a special security screw was hidden and there was no repair manual to figure that out, and so you ended up breaking a device further while trying to fix it. Sure, there's stories about adhesive being used to make your life hard, but there is a lot more that we are learning, and it's crucial that we see the importance of the repair movement, not just as a fun activity where people bring the thing that the commercial repairers wouldn't accept to repair because of these high costs due to the design. It's a movement that shows the way. Why? Because over time, these groups around the whole world have been collecting data that proves what we already know anecdotally, but it proves it in a very nice way. We have open data that everyone can see and verify, collected by organizations such as the Restart Project, the Repair Cafe Foundation, Repair Together, the Fixit Clinic, Repair Cafe Wales, and many others. Anstiftung in Germany, and this data tells us the stories of over 62,000 people today that have tried to repair a product, and what are the barriers that they've discovered. Now, for me, the crucial aspect of this is that if you look at the breakdown of product categories, and the product categories we could discuss, this data is not perfect, but it's the best data that's out there that anyone can access. Because manufacturers, retailers, and authorized repairers will never share their data. And we are, because that's what we have. It's our power. The vast majority of product categories that we see at these events, there is not a single piece of right to repair policy that applies to it right now, nor there is anything in the making that we have seen. There's promises about potentially tackling via consumer rights these issues for products that will never be covered by eco-design policies, but it is extremely hard to see this happening as holistically as we want it to happen. And basically, everyone, when they talk about repair, they don't just talk about getting their washing machine repair. They talk about having their coffee maker repair, their hairdryer repair, their laptop repair, their tablet repaired, their vacuum cleaner repaired, all of these things, their headphones, their earbuds. And this stuff is, A, not repairable most times, and there's no single piece of legislation that's looking at it. And yet, the media and legislators keep telling us, oh, the right to repair is here, we achieved it. There's been all these media campaigns when first the EU and then the UK announced that they were giving us the right to repair. They didn't give us anything. They gave us like a piece of legislation that for some products will give to a few people some access. So we need a lot more. And it's super clear to all of us that repair things, that things have not changed yet, and that we need to keep pushing. I'll just give you another example. A couple of months ago, we responded to an EU consultation after analyzing, thanks to a collaboration with students at a university in the UK, analyzing data about vacuum cleaners brought to repair events across the world. And we found that obviously there's a range of problems that leads to a very obvious statement that we need as many spare parts available as possible for these products. You want to know what the consultation was about? It was asking us if 3 spare parts are enough for future legislation? No, they're not enough. And it's obvious, but we have the data to back it up. So we really need a step change. We shouldn't even have to prove this stuff, but we can, and we have. So we need to speed it up massively. Another example is the lifetime of products. We see a life cycle assessment for environmental purposes of products by manufacturers that show the average CO2 emissions related to a life cycle of 3 to 4 years. Well, we see at events around the world, people bring in laptops that are very often older than 5.5 years. You see also probably a very ancient 20-year-old laptop in this chart. But the truth is people want to keep using their things. It's a myth that people just want to buy the latest and greatest. And if some people want to buy the latest and greatest, there's no problem, because if we make all the other products more repairable, we can reuse and upcycle and redistribute to people who might not potentially have a chance to repair otherwise. But there's something else. Has it become easier to repair over the last 10 years since we started all of this? No, it's actually getting more complicated, because more and more products depend on software, and manufacturers, as they see the wave of right to repair coming, are shifting to new tricks, which is not supporting products for long enough. And in fact, even in the current draft regulation for smartphones, we know that there's been delays because manufacturers were pushing back massively on extending software support as much as possible. And secondly, and we're extremely concerned about this, part pairing, which means that manufacturers want to control and authorize every spare part that you want to replace in your device, which could mean, for example, that if you harvest a spare part from a device that is no longer usable, you might not reuse it for a device that is still usable. So we want a universal right to repair. We do not want a world where there is a monopoly on repair based on manufacturers' choices. And yeah, people want to fix. I mean, they want to fix everything. And this is the beauty of having a real community and knowing that people get enthusiastic and get really unhappy when something cannot be fixed. So let's make it happen, and let's remind legislators that indeed, as Christina was saying, there is no time to waste. We've wasted enough. So let's make it happen.
Thanks so much, Igor, for this. Interesting enough is that we need actually a new economy to go and end this throwaway economy. We need a circular one, and this is why, Thomas, you would be able to provide a bit of a business case of what a circular economy could look like, and what are actually your current barriers so far.
Thank you. I'm with iFixit. iFixit is one of the founding members of the Right to Repair campaign in Europe. We're also a company. Our model is that we put online step-by-step repair guides for all kinds of products. We have about 85,000 or more online at this point. These guides are all free. They're even open source, so they're not making us any money. Our business model is the sales of specialized tools for electronics repair and spare parts, hence why I would be talking about the price of spare parts. We know a thing or two about that. But today I will be coming it from a different angle. Why will I be talking about the price of spare parts? Because it's a really important gap in the current regulatory framework. Whenever we talk to policymakers and we tell them how important it is, they always tell us it's not possible. We don't have a regulatory framework that actually allows us to do anything about spare parts, because we have a free market and we have, competition will drive prices down and all of that and all of that. So the result is, as Ugo said, only a very limited amount of products are covered at this point by a right to repair regulation in Europe. There's 5. Washing machines is one of them. And even for washing machines, although we have a series of repairability criteria, price of spare parts is not one of them. And the best part of legislation that's underway, we have now eco-design for smartphones that's underway and a repair scoring methodology that's also underway for smartphones. The repair score doesn't even mention spare parts price anywhere, and the eco-design regulation stipulates that the manufacturer needs to declare the spare price at the product launch, but it does not say that they have to stick to the price. So they can declare a price and then do whatever they feel like. You might say, is this a big deal? Well, I think it is. It is like, it's a horribly big deal. And I will illustrate this not with something from iFixit, but with an anecdote from my personal life that comes from a product that is covered by current regulations, a washing machine. So about 5 years ago, my washing machine, which was about 11 years old at that point, started to have this strange failure. The display started to go blank. Not immediately. First, there were these lines that sort of disappeared, and then the whole display went completely blank. So the washing machine still worked, it would still wash, but I could not tell it what to do anymore. Or more precisely, I couldn't see what I was telling it to do, so I did not know if I pushed a button what it would do. Obviously, at that point, I also regretted getting a washing machine with a fancy electronic display that actually I don't need, like a mechanical button would have been fine. I always use the same program. Anyway. So we disassembled the thing, and it was not that difficult. There were only 10 screws, regular Torx heads, nothing special, a few snap fits, and then I get to this part. So there's the part that you see at the bottom right. That's a circuit board that has the display attached to it at the bottom, and that controls the circuit board. And then you have this main board, which is a top board that controls all of the parts of the washing machine, and then you have a few plastic parts, the knobs and all of that. So ideally, I would get circuit board schematics, and I would get the few components that are faulty, because there's probably just one chip or a resistor or something, like a few components on this board that are failing. Ideally, I would get circuit board schematics, and I would replace those components and have them replaced, and it would cost like a few euros in parts, and I will be able to preserve even all of those circuit boards, which would be environmentally perfect. But I can't, because manufacturers don't share those circuit board layout schematics, and they're not compelled to do under any piece of regulation at this point. So all I can do is buy the spare parts. And I cannot get just the board with the display. I have to buy also the board that controls the whole washing machine, which is working perfectly, and I also have to get the plastic part. This is something we call spare parts bundling, which is also really detrimental. But the fun starts now. Here's the price of that part at the point when I wanted to buy it. 488.99 euros for a washing machine that's about to the euro. It is half of the price that I paid for the washing machine 11 years prior. So I would like to see a show of hands. Who in this audience would be willing, just for the electronics board, not including labor to replace it, just for the board, who of you would pay 500 euros to get that part of a washing machine that's 11 years old and that costed 1,000? Don't be shy. Okay, so for online viewers, there's none. So it gets better, because I also looked up the German website to see it's a German brand, so it might be cheaper in Germany. Here's the German price. 1,073 euros. That's actually more than I paid for the whole washing machine. So no hands in the audience. So all of you would be throwing out that washing machine that has a perfectly good metal casing, stainless steel drum, motor, pulleys, heating elements, sensors, all of that in perfect working order, and we will be chucking that out just because this stupid board costs more than the washing machine, right? And that's under the best regulation that we currently have. So this is a huge problem. And this is very clear. We know that the price of a spare part, like the price of repair, is what determines whether people will repair or replace. The price of the spare part determines whether that price is high or low, along with labor, and that ties in with ease of disassembly, which Hugo talked about. And we cannot leave this up to the market. Regulators will tell us the market will drive down prices, but once you're in this repair scenario, there is no competition. I cannot go shopping with Miele and Bosch for a spare part for my AEG or Electrolux machine, right? So at this point, the manufacturer has a total monopoly, and they can ask any price they want. And even with the best smartphone regulation on the way, where they will have to declare price, they can still ramp the price up, because this part used to cost 300, and then it cost 500, and then it cost 1,000. So if we really want to fully make this potential happen, to save these 80 kilos of washing machine not throwing it out just because a few grams of electronics failed, we need a policy tool that is horizontal, that covers all of the products, not just the 5 that we have now, that includes spare price, and that has a right to redress for a consumer in case a manufacturer doesn't live up to their promises. Looking forward to comments and questions. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Thomas. I think now it's time for the Q&A. So before I go and tell you about the questions that have been asked online, I would highly encourage people in the room to also ask some questions. So I will leave you a bit of time to get into the mood to know more. I see one question in front of me.
Does this work? Yeah. Fine. I have a question for Matthew. You said that the regulation and our thoughts about repairing are shifting from climate to resources. What we feel is that we might also have to have one versus the other. You see, if we have an old refrigerator, not badly isolated, it would be a plus on the resources, but it would be a minus on the climate. So we might even have to have a distinguishing there. But then my main question is, in fact, for Ugo. While you were talking, I was looking at our society. We have this very, very nice big room. We all have this room. We all own this room. Nice floor, clean sheets on the walls, and so on. And then we allow somebody to get into that room and dig a hole in a corner. They dig, and they make it a bit messy, and then they transport something across the room, and they spill a bit of oil, and then they go to another part, and they dig a hole there to get out of the room. That's the situation. We are the nice guys. We're fixing things because we are nice guys. We are helping people. In Denmark, we've done a bit of statistics. 0.1% of what goes to the waste disposal areas is what we fix. And we do, in fact, fix 80% of what we receive. But we are the nice guy, and we are losing big time because we allow the shit to happen in the corner of the room where they dig and they transport, and they make us buy stuff that cannot be repaired. We will never have any victory in this battle as long as we are the nice guys, unfortunately. But of course, I'll still go on being a nice guy most of the time. So how do we see that we could get a step more ahead in the fight for these regulations? Because I'm originally from the labor inspection kind of work, and if we had allowed people to work with epoxy without any protection, or allowed people to work with asbestos without any protection, we would have been a laughingstock today. We need to have regulations on what is done initially and the standards that are followed, because iFixit can go on helping us with spare parts and tools, but we'll never catch up with the guys who are just drilling in the corner. I think it was mainly for Ugo, but he may all comment.
I can quickly answer on the first part, which was about, yes, this kind of trade-offs between energy efficiency and material efficiency. Yeah, it's a debate actually on which I worked quite a lot when I was working for Reuse. Before I was working for Reuse, so it's a network of social enterprises active in reuse, repair, and recycling, and we had that a lot. So when developing eco-design requirements on fridges, for example, there were questions on, yes, like, do we want fridges to stay on the market for more than 10 years, because by then we will have technologies which will allow us to make fridges which are much more energy efficient. I say yes, like for fridges which are now 20 years old and which are consuming a lot of energy, maybe it makes sense to replace them. But like for fridges which we are building now, like how can we be sure that we will make such progress into energy efficiency that it will justify to not take care about its material efficiency? We need to take material efficiency into account into all the eco-design requirements that we make for products now, because we cannot just say, okay, now we just focus on energy efficiency because we will make progresses, but we don't know if we will make progresses. So that's something that we need to push for again.
Yeah, well, great question. And I think the key is that we need to broaden our coalitions massively. And the moment it becomes something that everyone understands and is part of, it becomes harder to block it. So, for example, one of the tactics of manufacturers in their push to differentiate what end users get and what professional repairers get is to try to split us so that the professional repairers will be content and we just go home, right? And the point is that then at first this works, and then professional repairers realize that with software locks, the manufacturers are trying to really put a limit to what they can do as well. And that if the price of spare parts is too high, people will still not repair, and so the professional repairers will also go out of business. So if we bring all of them on board, that's a start. But the next frontier is, and I've heard even in Europe, they're starting to be, even farmers are starting to be worried about the digital right to repair for their own tools. And so we need farmers' unions to get on board. And we need people to understand that it's an economy and it's jobs around repair. And it's not acceptable at this point, particularly in a crisis we are in now, where people cannot get to the end of the month because of plenty of other costs. Repair is one of the solutions. And so we just need to be more vocal and more united. Because of course, at the moment, there is still a divide between what we do nicely in our activities and events, and then what goes on, what continues to go on, and the budgets that those that represent manufacturers and retailers can invest in following any file and slowing things down massively. But we can win. We are making progress. I don't want to give just like a bad perspective. Things are happening. It's just that they need to happen much faster and much more broadly.
I'd also like to briefly get into the use energy or use footprint versus replacement footprint once more, because this is really important, because people want to do the right thing and they are told lies to make them do what they think is the right thing, and it is not. This has been very carefully studied. In the beginning, when a new technology is developed, then it progresses fast in terms of energy efficiency. But you very quickly get to a plateau where this year's model is not any better than last year's model. And washing machines have been there for a very, very long time, and so are fridges. And so this has been calculated, so you can calculate the optimum lifetime that a device should last before it actually makes environmental sense to replace it. And the important thing to know is that for no product out there, none, zero, the average actual lifetime now is longer than the useful lifetime. For every single product that has been studied, the actual average lifetime is much, much, much shorter than this environmental lifetime. For a smartphone, in order to actually cash in on the benefits of the increased environmental performance, you would have to use it for 70 years, okay? So this is no argument. This is no argument at all, which is why I just wanted to reassure you that I did fix my washing machine in the end. It's still working.
Thank you. Thomas, there is a really specific question actually for you online. Someone is asking why actually was the iPhone 14 rated 7 by iFixit out of the 10 for repairability when most of its parts are paired.
Okay, that's a tough one, but it's a justified one. Our repair scoring is a work in progress, and it's hard for us to take every element into account as the technology is evolving so fast. So the score was increased compared to the previous model because of a radical improvement in mechanical disassemblability. So it opens, the new iPhone opens from the back as well as it does from the front. So it used to be that the screen and the battery were easily accessible, but everything else was about a nightmare. And now, since the back opens, or if you drop the phone and the back glass shattered, in order to replace that back, you would have to tunnel through the whole phone. And now you can access the back. So this is why we wanted to reward this effort and attribute an additional point and up their score. But indeed, paired sparring is still a huge issue, and we're absolutely unhappy with that. And as the score progresses, we will probably punish that harder. Yeah, but it's work in progress. So it's imperfect, but it's the best we can do at this point.
Can I make a point on that? Quick point on that, by the way. As soon as you have a number, people will game that number. Right? Are you aware of the fact that sooner or later, Apple will work out ways to make their score better than the repairability of the phone is? Do you see what I mean? Yeah? And also, it's the nature of capitalism, right? They'll see that. It's like, smoking doesn't cause lung cancer, everything else. What they'll do is they'll find a way to come up with a device that has a score of 9, but is totally unrepairable. Yeah? That's the only problem I see with numbers.
Well, I think you can see this as an arms race, right? Or like the police running after thieves, and the thieves get better, and so the police needs to get better as well. So as manufacturers get more cunning, we have to get more cunning as well. But like yeah.
I see a question.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions, and I would love to get some input from you. Firstly, great that you fixed your washing machine, despite this horrible price for the spare part. I think one problem that a lot of people are facing is that when you do fix something, the warranty isn't extended, right? So the 5 years you will get from the beginning of the purchase won't be extended. That's why it's very risky sort of to change a spare part, because what if something happens 2 months later, right? So I think that's an obstacle for a lot of people. I would love to get some input on that. And the second one is that a lot of these things we're talking about are mass-produced items, right? But the fixing is not mass-produced. It's very individualized. So I work in Norway. I have a company that works with repair, and mainly now we're fixing clothes. And there is so many different kind of holes, for example, or just changing a zipper. You can do it in 20 different ways. So I think it's so like labor intensive that that ends up being a very big cost as well, along with the spare parts.
Excellent questions. Thank you. So as far as the warranty is concerned, you should not be voiding the warranty by doing a repair yourself. But it depends on what we call the presumption, like the burden of proof. So at this point in the first 6 months, the burden of proof is on the manufacturer, and after that it is on you. So if in the first 6 months you break the product by trying to repair it, the manufacturer will have to prove that you did that, and they will have to prove the link between the product breaking down and your intervention. Later on, it gets more complicated. So it's definitely true that we need to work on that, and we also need to adapt warranty legislation to a right to repair. And for instance, in the US, there's been significant progress where, for instance, many brands had these stickers saying, opening this voids warranty. And the FTC, after campaigning by the right to repair, the FTC has now actually ruled that this is illegal, and manufacturers can no longer stick that type of stickers on their appliances. So we are aware of that, and we're working on that. As far as the mass-produced versus individual thing, so yes, production is optimized, you make 100,000 in one go, and then when you want to repair it, it's a different one every time. So that's more labor intensive. This could be a bad thing or it could be a good thing. It could be a good thing because it could provide jobs. If those 100,000 things are made in China, that's not a job opportunity in Europe. If we can repair them over here and it actually takes more time, it means more jobs. The only thing we need is the money to pay for that labor to repair. And this, I think, is really a policy option. And there's an inconsistency now where we have this waste hierarchy. Mathieu showed this slide where we say that, you know, repair comes before recycling, and this has been agreed on since the 80s. But still, if you buy a washing machine, you will pay what is called an EPR fee. So you will pay a little bit in advance for the end of life. You will pay a few euros that will serve to collect and recycle it. So even though everyone agrees that repair is better than recycling, when you buy the machine, you're already paying for the recycling, but you're not paying for the repair. So in my view, we would need a tax, and France is working on something along these lines. When you buy the product, there should be a tax on it that already pays in advance for a repair fund that will then actually pay for the repair downstream, so that when your device breaks down, you, along with every other consumer, have already paid to get it repaired, or at least in part have paid for that labor cost. And Sweden, for instance, is doing something along those lines. You can get 50% deduction on the labor cost of a white goods that you get repaired. So there's, you know, there's work on that being done, but it's essential indeed that we solve this in order to have this economic opportunity of creating jobs here in Europe.
So just before we take one question from the audience, we have a really interesting question also on the French repairability index. Someone is asking online the fact that the spare parts price was quite big in France and in the French repair index for the people who don't know in the room. So the question is actually, why was it not brought into consideration within the European score? I mean, I'm asking to every panelist, not only Thomas. And also, if actually the French repair score has shown any new purchasing habits from the consumer's perspective.
Yeah, well, we would all love to know the answer to that question.
I mean, why has it not brought in? There's been, as Thomas mentioned earlier, like the framework, apparently according to legislators at the EU level, the framework doesn't allow them to consider price, which can vary across the whole of the EU. But we think this is a rather lazy approach. If the framework doesn't work, it means that you need to change the framework. I mean, that's quite simple. Of course, having a repairability score that takes some factors in perspective is already something. But yeah, if the price isn't there, it's not fit for purpose. In fact, even our partners and members of the campaign in France, HOP, Halte à l'obsolescence programmée, also already says that it's not enough, even the way it's taken care of in the French system. So we need to improve these tools over time, but not by taking out some of the key elements. And also because if we don't have a European repair index with the price, you'll still see the proliferation of national scores that try to fit price. We know that in Belgium, there are plans to have one modeled over the French one. We know that Spain is working on an idea around that as well. And yeah, so I think here we need really to rethink the whole system. If price cannot be taken into account, then we need a new approach that can take pricing into account.
Maybe as to the second question, what have been the effects of the French index being in place? I'm not aware of any studies that have researched changed consumer behavior. It might be a little early for that. We know that consumers are very aware of it. So I think 80% of the consumers or something have heard of it. So if they have heard of it, they will be taking it into account, but like to which extent it will influence their decisions, it's early to tell. What we can say is that it has immediately had an influence on manufacturers, and this is really important. Samsung, like the month that the legislation was in place, the first month that it was in place, Samsung immediately published consumer-facing repair guides, only in French and only on their French website. So it's not hard to see why they did it, right? And they had never done that before, ever. So this is putting pressure on the manufacturers. And Apple likewise has implemented now a consumer program. It's far from perfect. We have a lot of criticism, but Apple is selling now spare parts to consumers, which they never ever did before. And I am 100% sure that this is an effect of regulatory pressure. So I think that the French index has been very, very effective in shifting the landscape.
Thank you so much. We'll just take 2 questions from someone in green, and I saw someone in blue, and that will be, I'm sorry, the last question. But we can discuss after, after during lunch break.
Hi, my name is Rob Wienga from the Netherlands. I'm from a company who's sourcing and selling also spare parts from China, from original parts and also OEM brands. How you look into also that kind of label quality mark regarding spare parts, because we are repairing also spare parts, and then you have the original one, you can have refurbished one, but the consumer doesn't know or is aware which kind of product he's buying.
Again, a very relevant question. Consumer trust is important, and regrettably at this point, consumer trust is, or managing consumer trust is sort of a monopoly again of the manufacturer. Consumers will trust the manufacturer if they say it's an Apple authorized part or whatever brand it might be. And there's work to be done indeed to standardize this and to create confidence in consumers. For instance, for refurbished products, this is being worked on. Eurifas, which is an umbrella organization for refurbishers, has developed a quality label for refurbishing so that consumers can trust this, and it would be like non-original spare parts is a wholly different debate. We would really also like to have this included in legislation, that manufacturers would be actually compelled to allow the use of non-original spare parts, because this would create the competition that I mentioned before is non-existing. But then indeed, it would be good to indeed have a quality label that goes along with standards. But the development of standards is industry-driven usually. There's 2 ways that a standard can come about. The most usual ways that industry says, okay, let's agree, because if we all want to manufacture plugs and sockets, it would be much easier for everyone if they fit together. This is the way 90% of standards come to be. And then the other option is for a legislator, the European Commission, for instance, to actually issue a standardization mandate and ask for standardization on this point. And this would be very relevant, but it's very low on the agenda, and there's many other things that would need to be standardized first. So as relevant as I think it is, it's currently, regrettably, absolutely not on the horizon.
Yeah, okay, because I was one of the founders of the quality mark for refurbished iPhones in the Netherlands, and I think it will be also important to do that on the spare parts.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, you made the point that a spare part, the manufacturer has a monopoly on the spare part. But that's not necessarily, that shouldn't necessarily be the case, right? It's because intellectual property laws protect manufacturers' ability to do that. It used to be that you could get like aftermarket parts for your car, but now manufacturers are, in the US at least, they're using design patents to say there's a patented product, so you can't get a bumper for your car anymore. I don't know what the state of those intellectual property reforms or how much the focus is in the EU, but I'd love to hear more about whether or not you feel like you have to change, like a manufacturer's ability to say, oh, the 12 lines of software that we stole from Linux and put on this display feature for my washing machine now makes this part copyright, because I'm sure somebody could make money selling that part for less than $1,000.
Thank you very much for this question. We were smiling because we actually had an entire webinar on this exactly just a few weeks ago. So if anyone is interested, it's a very intricate, complicated debate. Just go to our website and have a look at the webinar. To give you a short answer, there are 2 directives in the EU that deal with copyright law, the Information Society Directive and the Computer Programs Directive. And it's very difficult for us to go to the copyright policy people of the EU and talk to them about repair, because repair is usually dealt with by a different, silos, and this is also kind of a limit within policy that people don't always talk to each other. So copyright is copyright and repair, and it's being a bit hard to actually get to them and make them understand what we actually mean. But we are definitely trying, we're definitely on it, and we're trying to create this debate. We're running out of time, so unfortunately I cannot give you more details, and we were going to close this panel because we have to move on to the next panel, which is about the ecological potential of repair. I'll let Nermin give a short conclusion, and then we have to move to the other speakers. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much for all the questions and the engagement today. It's really important to have this discussion, but also see your reactions to what has been said. Also, thank you to the panelists, because they're big change makers, and we've heard the power of this right to repair movement. I think you've also heard the fact that they need your support to visibilize, to support, but also to mobilize on this question. So thank you again, and big shout out to everyone today.
Hello, hello. Everyone enjoyed the first session? Yes. Good, very good. Okay, so now I'm going to check the time first, because I always mess this up. Okay, so we're starting 15 minutes late, I think. Christina, just to make sure, because we're starting 15 minutes late because we're meant to start past. Does that mean we have another 15 minutes until 35 past? It's okay? Okay, great. So, perfect. Well, otherwise, we're not going to have enough time for questions. So, hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Pierre. I'm working at the European Environmental Bureau, and we're part of the Right to Repair campaign, which was nicely introduced already. It's great to see you all here today. Firstly, I would just like to say thanks to Christina and Ola for really all their hard work organizing this event, and also and also to everyone else in the campaign for organizing the whole weekend. It's been a lot of work that's gone into it, so well done to everyone. So now we are really going to talk more about the environmental impact of repair, which was already touched on a lot, I think, in the session before. especially this question about whether it's better to repair or replace, which I was thinking about talking about, but it seems we will talk about other things. So I've got 3 very good speakers, from policy to advocacy to also research. I'll present them in a second, but we'll have time for questions at the end. So the first speaker is Alberto Vasquez Ruiz? Perfect. Okay, good. He's from Catapa, and Catapa is a Flemish, Belgian NGO, but really focused on mining issues. Actually, when I first started my job, the first time I met Alberto was in a scout hut in the woods in Flanders. And it was a meeting with there were young Flemish volunteers talking about mining issues, but already Alberto was campaigning about repair, because I remember he had 3 generations of laptops on a table, and he took them all apart, and he showed us, well, in fact, the newest generation, he showed to the volunteers who were there that they were non-repairable. So even though he's focused on mining issues, he's really been campaigning and teaching people about repair for many years. Yoko, we've only met recently. We haven't met in the woods yet, but Yoko is a researcher at Vito, also in Belgium, and they are doing lots of good research around repair, material efficiency, circular economy, and everything like that. And they're working closely, I think this is right, with the European Environment Agency to provide data and information on circular economy. And lastly, we have Simona Starkova. Thanks very much for coming today, Simona, who is legal officer at DG Justice. So DG Justice, just so you understand, it sounds very impressive, it is, but they are the ones working on the consumer-related laws around right to repair. So maybe not too many questions around IP and the smartphones proposal, but everything which is around warranties, guarantees, but also kind of minimum requirements at the point of sale. You can really feel free to ask her lots of questions. But they have 2 very relevant initiatives, which I think she is going to tell you about in a minute. So let's get started. First of all, Alberto, over to you.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre, for the awesome presentation of myself. So let's go very fast, because Jean-Pierre asked me to talk about the impact of mining in just 7 minutes. It's impossible, so it will be very, very, not really in-depth. So I chose to put that picture over there. Maybe some of you know the place. Las Médulas in my home country. Actually, it was the largest gold mine in the Roman Empire, almost 2 millennia away. You can see that the environmental impact that still is there is obvious. So it was my way to let you know that the environmental impacts of mining can be very long-lasting. So when I was thinking about mining, so what the majority of the people think about that? What was your first contact with mining? Well, in my case, I was a young gaming person, so for me, mining was just look for some resources on the ground, take them, when they are all gone, the game is almost over, because resources are key for winning the game. If that was the reality in our society, the game was already long ago over, because there are no visible gold anymore in this world since some centuries again. So the ratio of gold that we are getting today is just 1 gram per ton of moved material, and that means almost 1 ton of waste, very polluting waste. So you can imagine what mining is today. This is one gold mine of today, Yanacocha in Peru. This is one of the open pits. Just to make you understand the scale of the resource extraction intensity that we have today, I wanted to show this. So this pit is the same pit over there, and we go a little bit, a little bit farther. Same pit, the same pit, with all the mining area. So we go finally to an area of almost 14 kilometers long by 5 kilometers broad that is even 3 times bigger than the capital city, Cajamarca, of the same department. So when we think about mining from the cities, we don't really have a sight of the impact that the mines are having globally. And this is not only in Peru, this is everywhere, including here in the European Union. So ICT, electronics require resources, requires many metals that are coming from somewhere, and we are increasing them. So this is the scale we are talking about. And of course, this extraction and destruction is increasing very fast. Fall order. And I wanted to stress that these environmental impacts are always socioeconomic, because I was requested to talk about the environmental impacts of that mining extraction. But there are different things. When an accident happens, and an accident is happening every year several times, the last one was just 2 weeks ago in Jagersfontein in South Africa, but we could talk about many more. This is maybe the most known because it has been a lot in the media lately, the San Marco Dam or the Mariana Dam in Rio Doce in Brazil. So almost 700 kilometers of water source, ways totally polluted by very polluted mud flown from headwaters in the mine until the Atlantic Ocean. But we are talking about activities that are dealing every day with very toxic substances that can have spills, that can go to be in contact with people who don't know how to manage them. That is a very famous mercury disaster in Choropampa, Peru, with even the company as required local people to get them. They didn't warn them about the toxicity of the mercury they were taking, because the company didn't even tell them that that was mercury. Yeah, even when nothing wrong happens in the daily operation of the activities, you can have the risk, the very high risk of contamination. Maybe we are in Belgium. Oh, it's not working. Yeah. The lead contamination by Umicore in Hoboken is a very good example that the people who are living in Belgium may know, but it's happening everywhere in the world. We have also a very good example that almost never comes in the media in Pelt, in North Limburg, here also in Belgium. They are pumping water, groundwater, because it's contaminated by heavy metals. They will be pumping that water forever. It's actually eternal pumping they need to do, just as remediation. So these are the kind of remediation technologies we have to kind of remediate the environmental disaster we are doing. There is no magic solution. Remediation is actually not bringing back the original nature state of the place. It's just giving a patch to stabilize the destruction you have caused. And why, for me, this is worrisome, and why I thought it was very important to bring it to you, because all the forecasts that we are getting say the same. That doesn't matter what is the scenario you take into account, but metal mining and mineral mining will increase. And this, for me, means a lot of more mining, a lot of more environmental disaster, and a lot of more of thousands of people that will be impacted every day. Because it's not just e-waste, it's just all the people who are being killed every year just to open new deposits, and all the people who are working, who are suffering from these activities. So the impacts are there. Maybe we are not much aware about them because it's not interesting for anyone that these kind of things come up. And we can think, okay, but it's totally needed for our society, but we are now very aware of the carbon emissions, but maybe you don't know that mining and metallurgy alone are more than 25% of the emissions nowadays. If we replace fossil fuels by technologies that are based on metal and metallurgy, then you can very easily make the equation, and you will see that we will not be solving the issue, but just moving from one sector to the other, just moving the emissions. So that was my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alberto. I want to make sure we have time for questions, so I will go straight to you, Yoko. Thank you.
So, hi everybody, I'm Yoko. I'm a researcher working at Vito, and I will show you the ecological potential of repair. But I will show you the full picture, but I will mostly zoom in on our climate change impacts for today. So here, this is the figure showing our LCA impact with what we consume. And we as Europeans, we consume. And we see this is an LCA done upon our consumption behavior. And it shows all LCA categories, but let me simply stick to the lowest one, CC, climate change. And from this graph, from this bar, you can derive that the most impactful consumption categories is on housing, the energy we use, the water we use, and so on mobility, that we meet our transport needs, and on food, the food we buy. The impact that comes along with the use of household appliances is covered within a few categories here. It's under furnishing household equipment and maintenance. It's also under communications, and it's under the other goods and services. So it's scattered a bit. So that's why I looked further into literature and find this study. So here, this is only zooming in on our impact on the consumption of household appliances. And so here it was studied if we use these 9, but let's just ignore lighting. Let's zoom in on the other appliances. If we use those 8 appliances, what is the impact we generate by using those? And then you can derive also, let me only focus on the upper left bar or column. There we see that the usage of the dishwasher, the washing machine, the fridge, and the displays, the televisions, those generate the most impact. And how do we explain that? Well, this is on the other figure at the right, the orange one. You see that because those are appliances that consume energy, and these have, they have large operating times. We make use of them on a weekly basis or even more. The impact comes from the use phase. So for all other appliances we have in our households, we make use of coffee machines, we make use of mixers, etc. The impact of that is mostly coming from the production. Producing those things, transport them to the retailer, and then to your house. That's most dominant factor. But for those 4 types of appliances there, because we use them so many times, the use phase is very important. My next slide, this is a picture I stole from the European Commission because I understood that for the new regulation on eco-design, the ambition is to let this regulation cover 65% of the product-related greenhouse gas emissions and particulate matter emissions. But this is not very ambitious because of my previous slide. You see that the extended eco-design that is in place already, that covers already this amount. So what we see, this is my most important slide for today. What we see from the research we do is that please go ahead with repairing. Repair each of your devices anytime it breaks. Whatever the age is, whatever the failure is, keep on repairing those. Unless it is one of those 4 categories. If your washing machine fails, the fridge, the TV, or dishwasher, then it's maybe you should look it up what to do. And this, you can, please, I invite you to consult our tool. It's not online yet, but it will come. It's a tool we developed for the Share Repair project, and please consult it because it will depend on the age of your device and on the failure type, if whether it's better or not to have this thing repaired or replaced. So the tool will show you this type of figure. It will give you how many tons or kilograms of CO2 you save by opting for repair. And it will also show you the two scenarios. Either you repair and then you are in the orange line. You have some impact generated by your repair because you replace a spare part and this spare part is a new thing, had to be produced, transported, and so on. But then you will extend your use phase of this product with a few years. Of course, this is the uncertainty. We don't know for how many years, but at least you will get some credits for that. And you will make use of it until it will anyhow reach its end of life. And then you'll also replace the device, have some impact by the replace, and start using it. While in the other scenario, the replace scenario, there you have an impact at day 0 because of the fact that you purchased a new appliance. You will make use of that for a few years. Be aware that this appliance is more energy efficient because the slope is not that steep. But in the end, it will also reach its end of life. And you see, it's about slowing down these use cycles. That's what circular economy is about. And repair is one of the circularity strategies that has the ambition to really slow down the use. You make longer use of your product, and you so the longer we can make use of it, the better for the environment. That's the message I would like to give today.
Thanks. Sorry, before Simona, thank you. I wanted to, could you go back one slide actually, maybe? Is it possible? Because your presentation was so quick, I'm going to take advantage to ask you one more, please, one more question actually, because it links to what was said before. I think, Thomas, you highlight these products and saying that they should be used as long as possible. But we also did a study on this a couple of years ago, and to give the example of washing machines, we building on what Thomas said, we found that really the machines which are on the market today are not lasting anywhere near as long as the kind of recommended lifetime. I think HOP, there's someone from HOP here today, they did a great study in France. They said that the lifetime of washing machines had reduced from 11 now to 7 years was the average lifetime in France. That was already some years ago. And we saw that machines should last at least 20 years. And on top of this, we don't see any recent improvement in energy efficiency in the new models. So I just worried that this recommendation could be a bit misleading. So how should we really deal with this reuse or replace or repair question?
Yeah, true. Why I've said this because we see that the stock we have in Europe, in that stock, there was a lot of old washing machines still consuming a lot of energy and water, and that's the reason. But I'm fully aware of the fact that the last few years, these washing machines, they are way more efficient, and this hasn't been increased for so much recently. So, but we see that for the entire stock, there is still a part that is consuming a lot of energy. That is why we feel consult our tool, and then you can provide us with some details. What's the type? What's the energy efficiency label of your washing machine, and with which washing machine we would like to replace it, and then we will calculate for you the environmental benefit. So it depends on the case.
Okay, thanks. Sounds like a very useful tool we should all be using. Over to you, Simona.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I would like to start by thanking the organizers and saying that I'm very happy to be here today. And I thank you for the opportunity as well to listen to this interesting discussion. Good morning also to the online audience. Maybe I would pick up from a point that Yoko raised at the end of her presentation. She said, please repair as much as possible, repair your products as much as possible. And this is what we are trying to encourage consumers to do with our initiative. I'm here to talk about sustainable consumption of goods, promoting repair and reuse. This is the initiative that I'm working on at the European Commission, but I would put it in the broader context because, of course, no initiative alone can solve all the problems and address all the issues that have been raised here today in this discussion, even. Our initiatives fit into a broad policy context, the policy context of the Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, the new consumer agenda. There are a number of policy initiatives that pursue the big objective of the green transition, which is a key priority of the Commission, of the von der Leyen Commission, and I can assure you that we are working very hard on it. There is really a sense of urgency. So we're working around the clock on a number of initiatives. All these initiatives are maybe part of a puzzle, different pieces of a puzzle that we need to put together to make repair easy in practice, easy and accessible and attractive also as a choice for consumers. So our objective of our initiative is to encourage sustainable consumption of consumer goods, in particular by promoting repair and reuse. We will put forward our initiative in the coming months. Currently, we are still analyzing the problems and different types of solutions that could solve them. And importantly, this is part of a package with other initiatives that are pursuing the same objective. In particular, the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, which was already mentioned by Yoko and which actually addresses a number of the issues that were raised earlier in the discussion I heard on the product design side. So these are issues that may make repair difficult because of the way products are designed. And here I would like to show you how our work somehow links to this other work strand. So we have the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products proposal, which was put forward in March, together with Empowering Consumers for the Green Transition proposal. So these are already two very big initiatives on the Circular Economy Action Plan. The first one, Eco-Design, is focusing on the production side. So the idea there is to ensure that products are designed in a way that makes them sustainable, repairable, and recyclable for the future, so that repair is easy from a technical perspective. Then we have Empowering Consumers for the Green Transition. This initiative is focusing on the point of sale. And this is the moment when consumers choose which product to buy. And the idea here is to encourage consumers and to make it easier for them to find the more sustainable, the durable products on the market. So the idea is to give them all the relevant information at the point of sale, and not only relevant, but also reliable information on the characteristics, on the key characteristics of durability, repairability, when they choose a product. And this initiative, in fact, also addresses some practices which will be considered unfair, like, for instance, early obsolescence or greenwashing, presenting products in a way that misleads consumers to believe that they're actually greener or more sustainable than they actually are. So this is the second circle. And we are now working on the third one, which is an essential one to complement the first two, and this is the use phase. This is what happens after you buy a product as a consumer. And what happens when something goes wrong? What happens when a product breaks down? There is a defect. How do you deal with that? And how do we encourage consumers to actually repair? This is what Yoko said. She said, please repair as much as you can. And we are now thinking how to encourage consumers to do that. So there are 3 areas that we are focusing on. And there are different scenarios where actually each of us could find ourselves at one point or another. The first one is the scenario where you are within the so-called legal guarantee. What does it mean in practice? Let's say you buy a product, you buy a phone, you go home, and suddenly you realize the screen is not working properly. There is something wrong. It doesn't react to your commands. And then you need to go back to the seller. Because the product is defective, you realize you bought a product which was defective already at the time you received it. You go to the seller, and here consumer legislation in the EU gives you rights. It gives you remedies for a product that was not in conformity. It was defective upon delivery. And the key remedies you have is to ask for a repair or a replacement. And imagine here, the seller tells you, okay, there is a problem with the screen, indeed. He recognizes it. And it will take, let's say, maybe a week or maybe 2 to get it repaired because they need to order a part or they need to send it somewhere else to be repaired. So what do you do as a consumer? Do you wait for 2 weeks for the phone for which you paid a lot of money? Or can you ask just to get a replacement, to get another phone? And you have the right to ask for a replacement. And in reality, we see that the majority of consumers will prefer replacement in this situation, and this is something they are entitled to under the current rules. So here, this is one of the scenarios we are looking at. Then another scenario would be in the second square, where you are beyond the legal guarantee. And you may be beyond the legal guarantee outside of its scope because it has been, let's say, 3 years after you purchased the phone, and the guarantee is only 2 years in your member state. 2 years is the minimum in the EU. So you are beyond that period, something went wrong, the screen broke down, you're in the same situation, but now it is up to you to find a repairer who will repair your screen. It is up to you to pay for that as well. Maybe there are a number of issues in the process that you face. First, you need to find the repair, that you need to wait for your phone, and then you need to pay the price for the repair, which may be rather high. And here, again, consumers are faced with the choice. Will I repair this phone, or will I rather buy a new one? And maybe 4 or 5 years down the line. And we see that the longer this period is, the less people are likely to repair their phone, the more are likely to buy a new one. So here again, we're looking into this scenario. And then the third scenario, let's say your phone cannot be repaired. Let's say you dropped it, it's your fault. Actually, that could happen even 1 year after you bought it. If you dropped it, it's your fault, then you may not be covered. You will not be covered by the legal guarantee, in fact. And then, would you consider buying a refurbished phone, let's say? And this is an interesting question, and the majority of consumers actually may not, because they're not used to buying and to using refurbished goods or second-hand goods. So this is another area we're looking at. Now, I will not dwell on the details of all the issues that we identified. I would like just to say to you that we have consulted broadly. We have received a lot of input, and we are reading. We have gone through a lot of contributions. You can see here hundreds of contributions by various stakeholders who have shared their views on these situations and on possible solutions. And I can confirm that actually there is a very high support by the stakeholders for an action to be taken in all of these 3 areas, both within the legal guarantee, beyond the legal guarantee, and also promoting reuse of goods, meaning either second-hand goods or refurbished goods. And here, the final slide shows a variety of measures on which we have consulted. These are the different types of solutions. I'm not going to bore you now with details going through each and one of them. This is just to show to you that there are various types of measures, various types of interventions that could be taken in each of these three areas. This is not even exhaustive, but a lot can be done to encourage repair in each of these situations or reuse of second-hand or refurbished goods that would steer consumers or encourage them to make a more sustainable consumption choice. And there is actually quite a high level of support, at least a majority of respondents support different kinds of measures. Why is this important? Well, it is important because at the end of the day, what each consumer does has a lot of impacts. The way we consume has a lot of impacts, and it does have impacts on the environment, and we very much recognize it. It does have impacts on, of course, the CO2 emissions, on the energy use, but also on resource extraction, because the production phase, the sales phase, the use phase, and later on the waste production, all of these phases indeed have very significant impacts on the environment, which we would like to address in a positive way so as to reduce the negative implications of our consumption on the environment as a whole. And each of us has a role to play. All consumers have a role to play by making more sustainable consumer choices. I'm sorry I cannot tell you more about the solutions we will put forward today. There is no final decision taken on that yet, but we are working hard on that, and you will hear soon from us and about us again. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Simona. Just a point, when you ask a question, please can you say your name and the organization you represent or where you're coming from? Maybe just one question, Simona, to get started. I think a lot of the people here in the room today are coming from the independent repair sector or also working in repair cafes. How do you see them fitting into your proposals, or have you consulted them on what you're doing? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, of course, we're very much aware of the important role that independent repairers are playing. And I would like to assure you that this is really at the center of our attention. I think they do have a very important role to play, especially when it comes to repair beyond the legal guarantee. Why? Under the legal guarantee, the responsibility is on the seller. So the seller has to make arrangements for repair, and they may do it in different ways. This is a business decision. They may subcontract independent repairs. This is the business, B2B type of relationship. But in the second scenario, beyond the legal guarantee, it is up to the consumer to choose a repairer who can fix the problem at a reasonable price and in a convenient manner. And in fact, many consumers look for repair in their proximity. They don't want to go to another town. They don't necessarily want to go to the manufacturer and pay a higher price, or to the seller, or to any particular repair. They want their product repaired at a reasonable price and at a reasonable time. And here, independent repairers have a very important role to play. So, and we think there is very high potential for the repair in this scenario. And they're very much in the focus of our attention for also the measures that we are considering to encourage repair in that scenario. Thank you very much.
Okay, one question at the back there. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is my name is Siet Wijnja. I'm from the Netherlands, from a website called iFixit.com, a repair platform. What I would like to know is, for example, when we achieve, for example, that we fix, let's say, 10% more electronic devices in the forthcoming years, what would that mean in terms of the raw materials we need? So, what exactly is the real benefit in terms of mining raw materials, for example? Do we have numbers about that, or figures, or is there research what that would benefit the world?
Maybe I can take it, but you are the raw materials expert. There, we don't have really numbers for raw material extraction available yet, but I have numbers available for what if we repair substantially more? What does that mean for climate, our carbon emissions and so on? Really from a top-down perspective for a larger region such as Northwest Europe, what would that mean? And how far you can go with that. So this is a study we are currently doing in scope of the Share Repair project, and this deliverable will become available beginning of next year. But we use stock and flow models for that.
Okay, great. Well, we'll keep in contact about it then. Thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe just to add from my side that there may be data in the future also under our initiative. We're looking into the impacts of the current situation, of the current consumption and the current use of consumer goods. And then the idea is to prolong the use of the current goods. And this has positive impacts also on resource extraction. So there will be some data in the future in terms of impacts of our intervention at the broader EU level. But I cannot share it yet. It is not finalized yet. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm JB Ferron. I'm an electronics engineer working at Swarn, which is a low-tech engineering company. We are, between others, reintegrating discarded smartphone parts into industrial applications. And one of my main questions is that we spoke a lot about the repair today at the moment, but we did not speak so much around the recycling of electronics parts. Namely, Thomas spoke a lot about the repair of electronics. I think we underestimate the potential of the repair of the electronics himself, which has a huge environmental impact and which must be decreased as an impact. And so we have to take into account the repair of the electronics board, which is possible. We have satellites that are working in space for 40 years, so we are able to produce and build electronics that are reliable. So I think we need to be more ambitious on that point and think about the whole life cycle of those applications and avoid the recycling of electronics, which is impossible and is a loss of opportunities. I would like to have your opinion on this. It would be great. Thanks.
Well, I totally agree with your statement, but I'm not sure if your question is, what do we think from that statement? So,
yeah, it's maybe more in the framework of the repair campaign. How do we consider the recycling of what has been broken? Do we throw it away? Do we bury it? Do we try to reintegrate it in other applications? Do we take time and energy and money to repair it himself, to reintegrate it? What do we do about the broken part?
okay, thank you. So yes, I think that is key to reintegrate that in the cycle, in the product cycle. I'm going to refer to the previous presentation to the previous panel when Mathieu said there are limits to recycling, but he didn't say why. What are those limits and why they are set there? And I think you are referring to that. There is no kind of restriction, no kind of framework for producers, for manufacturers, how they can mix materials inside the product to make them recyclable for you, reusable for you. So if we don't even address that issue here for the repairers who will be extremely benefited from making recyclable products, how can you recycle something so complex as electronics? How can you improve the recyclability of electronics? It's very clear by making more modular, even more modular, and try to have material restriction percentage on the level of mixture in your product, in your model. That would be the only possibility. But when you check right now the proposal in the Commission, that isn't not even mentioned as a possibility. They talk about materials efficiency, but materials efficiency can mean many things. If you do an LCA about materials efficiency, you are not talking about making things more modular. You are not talking about setting their percentage of minimum of recyclability index. So right now, that regulation is not there, but I totally agree with you. That could be extremely positive tool to be less dependent from new primary mining resources, to be less dependent from having to push the companies because they will be obligated to manufacture products more modular, more recyclable, and more repairable. So that will be a very good angle to work, yes, from my point of view, at least.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, question from Christina.
I actually wanted to bring some questions from the online participants because there were some, especially for Simona Stajkova, our representative from the European Commission. One is with regards to the scope. As you have maybe heard during the first panel, we were criticizing a lot the scope of EU regulations when it comes to right to repair because the scope is often very limited. So could you tell us again what the scope is of the proposals you were talking about? What products will be covered? And there is another more provocative question from someone online who's saying, for Simona, in your opinion, during the legal warranty period, should consumers be actually obliged to try the repair before requesting the replacement in order to avoid e-waste? This is, of course, a provocative question to try and go further. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions. These are very relevant questions. In fact, not even so provocative, I would say. It's a very reasonable question to ask. Well, on the first point, on the scope of our intervention is horizontal. So it concerns consumer goods in general. Maybe this is an important clarification. And we need to distinguish here also between horizontal initiatives, which are very broad in scope, like our consumer law, it's horizontal. And then there are also product-specific initiatives. Also under the eco-design legislation, there will be a number of forthcoming product-specific initiatives. Here I wanted to react to a previous point about issues that have not been addressed now, that are not there now in the horizontal legislation. They may be in future product-specific legislation, because not all issues can be resolved in the same way in a horizontal legal act. So here, just as a clarification, on the consumer side, our intervention is horizontal, so it will have a very broad scope. Of course, there may be some exceptions where relevant to make it feasible in practice, but the scope is horizontal on consumer goods. And then on the second question, which is indeed a very reasonable one, should consumers be obliged to repair under the legal guarantee? What is my opinion? Well, I think my personal opinion here doesn't matter. It will be, at the end of the day, for the Commission to decide what is the appropriate type of intervention. And here I can tell you that opinions indeed differ. So we are looking here more at the opinions of the stakeholders also, and we are analyzing all the costs and benefits that will result from this policy choice. And indeed, this is one of the policy measures we are exploring. It was on my slide. It is prioritizing. It is repair as a primary remedy. So basically, then you would not be entitled to first ask for replacement. And here I can tell you this is a controversial point. There are a lot actually opposing views on this, because from an environmental perspective, this is a very positive measure in a way, but from a purely consumer protection perspective, this is a measure which takes a lot of the consumer rights achievements which we have done over the past years, and there are actually also a lot of stakeholders who oppose this kind of measure. If it will be selected at the end of the day, you will see soon when our initiative is put forward. But this is one of the possibilities, one of the measures we are looking at. Thank you.
Okay, another question, maybe right at the back. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Purna, and I'm from Repair Cafe from Bengaluru, from India. So I'm going to bring one question to Simona. Now, my question to you would be, what about the informal repairers? The stakeholders, one of the stakeholders are informal repairers, and this is their battle also. The consumers is definitely, but because this is a matter of livelihood as well. I would like to inform you, and of course you must be knowing that even the repairers, informal repairers in this whole journey, they have actually become replacers now. They are no more repairers, because there are so many spare parts are available. Now the repair itself is not economical anymore. It is the replacing of the things are more lucrative for them. So have you thought about, have you done any work on these issues? I would like to know. I mean, of course, my question is coming more from the developing economy. I don't know if it is relevant here also. I'm sure it would be. Because, as I was studying more the informal repairers, the consumer who is finally approaching the informal repairers. As you said, it's a decision of the consumer, about whether to take it up or not. But what is the role of the informal repairers? How we are involving them into this whole scheme of things? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. I would just like to ask for a clarification if I understood it correctly. Yeah. You mean informal repairers versus professional repairers? Repairers who are not professional, or I misunderstood?
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about these independent repairers. They are, when I say informal, means they are not recognized anywhere. And they are not certified, but they are actually in this repair business. You can call it as third party, but they are not official third party or extension of a, OEM or a manufacturer or something. But they exist. They are invisible, basically, but they exist. I hope I'm clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, it is also an important question. Yes, we are taking these actors into account as well. So I would call them maybe non-professional repairers, because we have a definition of professional repairers who have specific qualifications. In fact, under the eco-design legislation, professional repairers have the right to access specific type of information and also spare parts, and these rights will grow in the future even more as we have more and more eco-design product-specific rules coming into force. Now, of course, there is also a role, and maybe an important role, for informal repairers to play. And here, I would say we have identified some types of issues in this connection, and the key issue is safety. So this has been the issue that was raised in the discussions and contributions that we have received, that for certain types of repair, there may be significant safety considerations, that something may actually explode. Let's say electronic devices could even explode, or could hurt a person who is not qualified and does not have the qualifications to repair it. And that is why, for some types of actions, there are specific rules that ensure that professional repairs will have access to all the relevant information and all the spare parts. For the rest, as far as possible, everybody else, including consumers, should also have access to the information and to the spare parts, as long as there are no such safety kind of issues. So that has been taken into account already on the product design side and the eco-design legislation. From our point of view, from the consumer point of view, I think it is best when there is more competition in the market and when they have the widest possible choice. Because indeed, for consumers, what matters, often one of the key factors is price. And indeed, the washing machine example we heard earlier, based on the data we have collected, there are not many consumers who will choose repair in this kind of situation, because the price ceiling, the tolerance ceiling, so to say, for consumers to pay for repair is about maybe 25% of the original price of the device. It can vary, of course, depending on the type of device, depending on the consumer, but price is a key factor. And the more competition there is in the market, the more chances the consumer has to find someone who can repair this for a reasonable price, the higher the likelihood the consumers will repair. And we want to encourage this kind of competition. And indeed, informal repairs are part of the solution, I would say, who could provide this kind of good repair opportunities for a reasonable price. So they have a role to play indeed. Thank you.
I would like to comment to the question, to the last question. So I'm myself, as Jean-Pierre explained, an informal repairer here in Belgium. So I repair for myself, for friends, family, no profit. This year I was really, really sad and economically impacted by a decision it was taken. So I normally ask my local computer shop for spare parts, but what happened when the device is too old, there are no computer parts anymore here in Europe. So I need to check in eBay and AliExpress and the other sites you all repairs know. So finally, the one that I needed came from China. What happened? Import tax. I finally paid more than 80 euros for a piece that is 10 years old to repair my laptop. So even if I want to repair my own stuff, it's like the system is evolving to make it more expensive and more difficult for you. There is no even centralized database to check if the spare parts are in European Europe. Cannot the European Commission promote at least an online portal to have a list of spare parts and which company is owning that? Why do I have to bring them from China? Why do I have to pay for an import tax for a good that has no value in accountability because it's more than 10 years old and it's an electronic device? I find that, personally, yeah.
Okay, one very last question, and then we have to go for the coffee break. In the blue, please. Yes.
Hi. Yes, maybe we have time for something else. I just wanted to add to that. At Mercedes, we provide the training sessions to change the perception of our use to electronics. So we basically work with people. Because, I mean, a lot of the things that we've been saying, you know, trying to promote repair when a user has spent £300 on a mobile phone and then it's faulty, and would you force them to repair it instead of a replacement? We could talk for hours, but, I mean, going back to the database, we have hundreds of laptops that they just have one small part that is gone and it's impossible to find the part. Whether you are a professional repairer or an independent repairer, it's just impossible. And we dream of having a database where we could just say, I've got this laptop, this is the fault, anybody wants a part, you know, and just everybody, all organizations, you just pay for the postage. And you just get the part that you need, and we could be saving so many devices. And we work with the London councils, in London, and it's so difficult to get the message across to say that there are, I don't know what the number is, but we are quite small and we've got hundreds. So I don't want to imagine what the number is. We really need a database that we can just post. I've got this device. For me, it's impossible to repair. Can anybody use the parts? And it should be just, you know, the postage. Sorry, thanks.
Okay, thanks for this dream. We can maybe think about this more in the debate, but we take it seriously. It's a very good idea. And so now we have, I think, 15 minutes. Can someone confirm this? Okay, 15 minutes for the coffee break. It's outside on the left. And I just to wrap things up, I really thank you so much for your good interventions and your expertise on this topic. We're obviously waiting very patiently for these proposals on consumer law. November 30th, is that right?
This is the planned date.
Okay, November 30th, we will share the proposals when they come out. And thanks again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Straight to the point.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt all the networking and all the nice discussions that are going on, but we really have a full agenda and we have very interesting speakers for this panel as well. So may I please ask you to take your seats again and come back to the room. Welcome back also to our online participants. Let me just remind everyone, because I see that people want to conclude the conversations, we have a delicious lunch, which is going to start just afterwards, where you can absolutely keep on going the conversations, which is absolutely also very useful, and it's also the point of the meeting. Right. So welcome back, everyone. As you know, we have talked in the first half, we have talked about the Right to Repair campaign. We have talked about the ecological benefits of repair. And we have already also started to talk about the fact that repair is not only good for the environment, it can also be a business model. It is already a business model, as the speaker at my left, for instance, will tell you. And this represents an opportunity for Europe in terms of many things, in terms of environmental sustainable jobs, in terms of digital sovereignty, and more. So let's open this panel on repair as a socioeconomic opportunity for Europe. Let me start with Alexandre Tanet, who is at my left. He represents Back Market, which is a company that you may know. It's an online market for refurbished items. And I would like to ask Alexandre to tell us more about Back Market, its business model, and what this can mean for employment opportunities with regards to repair in Europe.
Thanks, Christina. Hi, everyone. So, as Christina said, I'm Alexandre from Back Market. First of all, I would like to apologize on behalf of Marie Castelli, which was supposed to speak today, but she's pregnant, and so she had to stay at home. I know she's looking for us. So first thing, before starting, I would like to thank the Right to Repair campaigns also, because it's very rare, you know, to have something about economic and social benefits regarding circular economy, repair, and reuse, you know. As we've seen in the previous panel, there are a lot of work to be done that remains, you know, to foster and to generalize repair and reuse. But we already can provide good news. I will try to do so. It's not enough, but I will try to. For those who don't know Back Market, maybe I can tell you a little bit more to understand our business model. So it's a French company, rather young, 8 years ago now. We are a member of the Right to Repair campaign steering committee. And so we are an online platform specialized, you know, in refurbished electronic and electronical devices. So the principle is very simple. We work with more than 1,500 refurbishers, and they sell their products on our platform, and we provide them for consumers across Europe. Basically, we sell in 16 countries, and including 13 European countries. We also have a buyback service. You know, so it means that we enable customers to sell their used product when they don't want to use it anymore. And as you may know, it's a very important challenge in repair and reuse, as we don't have enough collection in the sector. Because a lot of phones remain in drawers or in drawers of in-house or in companies' shelters. So it's a very important topic. And we also offer repair services, because our belief is once we sold the product, we want it to remain in the hands of the customer. You know, we don't want to oversell it, and we want to be kept by the customer as long as possible. You know, repair and reuse have to go together hand in hand to succeed in promoting and fostering circular economy. So as you see, we are now 700 employees. We grow fast. We are working with a lot of professionals, and I think it's truly a circular economy business model. And we are one of the proof that it can succeed, it can work. And there are a lot of companies in the Right to Repair campaign that are also the proof that it can work, basically. Maybe it was not the case in 15, 20 years ago, but now it is. And our success is obviously based on our networks of refurbishers and on our on 1,500 refurbishers, more than 80% are based in Europe. So it's really a European success, especially, and that's what gathered us today. So why it is a success? Because currently refurbishment and repair has a few success in Europe. Alors, we don't have a lot of database, and I'm supposed to show you the economic and social benefits of repair and reuse in Europe to demonstrate that. We are a demonstration, but we don't have enough data, basically, today. It's really a shame, but we don't have it across EU. That's why I'm taking this opportunity to announce that together with, for example, the EEB, which who is here in the room, at the front, we are going to launch a study to assess economic and jobs opportunity for all the repair and reuse sector across Europe, to have the figures and to show, to demonstrate for policymakers and all customers that it's not only about environmental benefits, of course it is, and it's the first aim, but it can be also a great opportunity for sharing the value and social benefits for everyone. So to meet social transition, social equality, and circular economy transition. We have various figures. They are not complete, but as an example, we have assessed that in France, there is more than 5,000 jobs in refurbishment sector. The NGO Gaia report showed that more than 20,000 jobs were created in the repair sector of electronic devices in France. So I have a lot of French figures because basically we are French, but I'm sure it's pretty the same in other countries, and shows that it's not, it's not generalized at EU level yet. And so that's the current situation. And also important figure is that it's still in the NGO Gaia report, shows that when you repair 10,000 tons of electronic devices each year, it creates directly 400 jobs, which is quite good. And it's 3 times more than jobs created for recycling. So we have the first proof that circular economy can create more jobs at the end than linear economy and recycling only without reuse or repair. So that's the first thing we know now. And I would like also to end by the potential that repair and reuse have at EU level. There are 2 reasons to believe that there is a huge potential. The first one is that demand is here already. There was last week a report that was disclosed by the FIVAD. It's the Federation of E-commerce Actors, basically, and it shows that there is a strong willing to buy second-hand products. And for example, 51% of French people are willing to buy a second-hand phone in the incoming months. So it's enormous. So the second thing I would like to share with you is that it's not a lack of demand, it's a lack of supply. And why there is a lack of supply? Because we still need to remove barriers at EU level in the law, in the EU legislation, basically. The second reason why we could believe that there is a strong potential is about market shares. To make a comparison, the automotive sector today is about, 65% at EU level of cars sold are second-hand cars. In the tech sector, it's about only 10 to 20% for now. So the gap and the potential is enormous. And how can we reach this potential? Why are we still stuck at 10 to 20%? It's because basically we have to act on two files, very important, and I'm sure you all know that. It's to ensure that OEMs, manufacturers play a fair game with at design stage and with all the independent repairers and refurbishers. So at the design stage and at after sales stage. And the second most important file is to give consumers a true right to repair, to expand product lifespan. And it means not only within legal warranty, but most of all, beyond legal warranty, any customer, any end user should have the right to repair, to have its device repaired as long as he wants and in any network. So that was my message today. So I was a bit long, but thank you all.
Thank you, Alexandre. I think it's a quite concrete example of how circular economy and, as you were saying, we're not talking about recycling here, we're talking about repair and reuse, is already creating jobs, and the potential is there to do so much more. Of course, we're always speaking to the legislators in the room. Our next speaker is Georgios Verdi. He represents the European Digital SME, Small and Medium Enterprises Alliance. So my question for you would be, what do you think that pro-repair policies in Europe could change for European SMEs, European digital SMEs, and what do you think it would mean for European digital sovereignty?
Well, thank you a lot, Christina. Our main message at the European Digital SME Alliance is that we always try to underline how critical the role of small and medium-sized enterprises is for Europe. And let me give you just some indicative numbers. We have 24 million SMEs in Europe right now, which represents 99.8% of the market. Moreover, they account for 2/3 of total employment, as well as 60% of the total value created across all 27 EU member states. Therefore, it is SMEs that are the main drivers of growth and innovation in Europe. So to be able to unlock the socioeconomic potential of repair, we also need to include the role of SMEs in the picture. Now, this should not be seen as a burden, but rather as an opportunity for Europe. Due to the relatively smaller size, SMEs have the ability to adapt to new circumstances, new environments, and follow new trends. And it is this ability that makes them the ideal actors to implement the right to repair on the ground. They are always looking to seize new business model, and we saw that during the COVID-19 pandemic as well, where they digitalized their operations in a very short time frame. What we need to do from our side is make sure that we create the right conditions, the right environment to allow them to innovate and create a market, a secondary market of after-sales services. Now, the distinct proper in the domain of hardware is that it is relatively more high barriers to enter the market. It's a more capital-intensive industry. So what we are seeing from our members is that SMEs tend to innovate very efficiently in the software domain. And I want to talk a bit about that. And Christina, I know you had a very excellent workshop a couple of weeks ago on software specifically. So I will be brief, but I think it's important because in an era of smart devices, the right to repair goes hand in hand with the right to repair software, the right to upgrade, and they all belong in the larger framework of a right to innovate. And we believe that in order to ensure this right to innovate, we need 3 key ingredients, and those are open data, open standards, and open source. And let me start with open data, which refers to the ability of the user to access their data, have control over his data, and also share that with third-party These third parties, in our cases, would be the SMEs that would be providing repairing services in the secondary market. In this slide, the Data Act is the most relevant legislation, and it does point to the right direction. It even contains an explicit reference in how this new wave of data liberalization will help us unlock the potential for repair and maintenance services, and as well as diminish the dependency of the consumers on the manufacturer. However, there is a risk here that original equipment manufacturers will impose complex security standards. And this takes me to my second point. We need to ensure that OEMs do not impose a factual barrier to the market for SMEs. So it is important for regulators as well to ensure an open and competitive data economy. And the key word here is interoperability. We need to ensure common standards across devices and products. Finally, the third key ingredient is open source, and that is open forms of innovation that allow smaller players to accelerate innovation uptake as opposed to closed forms of innovation. And in this regard, we must be purposeful in promoting open source technologies, as well as exploring the thin line between open source and intellectual property laws. Now, let me use two examples to illustrate these points and take them to the real world. The first example comes from the automotive sector, and it is about cars. Now, if we imagine that car data about the vehicle, can be shared among the different actors in the economic value chain, then we can foresee that new business opportunities will be unlocked. It is not difficult to imagine that an SME, for example, will utilize the data from the car traffic, the road patterns, the weather, and provide a software solution that will be able to make the driver more energy efficient in his day-to-day operations. The second example now that I want to talk about comes from the energy sector itself, and it is about heating and cooling consumption in our houses. Independent software providers could create solutions that would help us optimize energy efficiency in our houses, and this is, of course, a very topical solution. However, the smart metering systems that offer us access to that data are not interoperable and thus impossible to access. Now, the paradox here is that Europe has contributed to develop some of the best standards in the world regarding connected devices, but we do not make use of these standards. We prefer to let market forces decide, and that has led us to a market failure. Now, these are three overarching dimensions which we should strive for. We could also talk about some lower-hanging fruit that will also assist the smaller and medium enterprises in helping us create a thriving ecosystem of after-sales services, and those would have to do with regulatory guidance, educating consumers, upskilling of workers, finance. I will try not to talk extensively and exploit my time, as I believe we're a bit short on time. I'll be very happy to maybe address this in the Q&A. But I want to finish up with a final closing remark. And in the first session and throughout all the talks, it has been made very clear how a right to repair would help Europe achieve its climate targets. But we believe there is more to that. Besides the climate targets, a right to repair, if done right, could also help us move closer to digital sovereignty. And that is a future where Europe would be able to act more independently in the digital domain. But to do this, we need to create, first of all, the right conditions for our own European champions and allow them to innovate and launch their products in the market. And that starts with our small and medium enterprises, and I'll close with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Georgios. I really like to hear this kind of talks, because whenever we, as a Right to Repair campaign, talk to legislators, it's always we're always trying to push for more Right to Repair legislation, and one could think, what is there to lose? And of course, the argument is, but what about the economic consequences? And actually, we have economic actors on our side that are telling us that positive economic consequences are there to be harnessed from what we're asking. And what Georgios was talking about open software, open data, we are very aligned on that. So it's not only compatible, the ecological benefits and the socioeconomic benefits, they really go hand in hand, and they are necessary one to another. Now to hear from the European Parliament, we have with us the member of the European Parliament, Sarah Mathieu, who is joining us. And for the people who might not be in the European bubble, also listening online, MEP Sarah Mathieu is working in the ENVI committee of the European Parliament, so on environmental legislation, but she's also working in the EMPL committee that deals with employment and social affairs. So we think that it's very interesting to hear from your perspective, how do you think that we can harness, enable these socioeconomic benefits of repair via European initiatives?
Yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks for having me, and thanks for organizing this. I was lucky enough to also be able to follow some of the previous debates, and I have to say that it got me a lot of new ideas when it comes to the work within the Parliament, because indeed, as you said, I'm working in the ENVI committee, and there we will be working on the eco-design regulation. So, I mean, that's very on topic, but what I also always try to do is find convergences between the different committees that I'm working on. And indeed, that's also the case when it comes to EMPL, so everything to do with social and labor, but even also INTA. I'm also in the International Trades Committee, and I mean a lot of the things, for instance, that were said when it comes to mining, when it comes to critical raw materials, etc., is very relevant, I would say. So I always try to put circularity and just transition as leading sort of principles in the work that I do. Maybe more generally, to start with, I think we're really witnessing massive economical paradigm shifts, finally, I think. Well, we see that globalization as we knew it from the past decades, that's really unraveling, and that's not just because of, you know, COVID, for instance, or value chains that have been disrupted. It's much more than that. And you can really see that in big tech. You can see the geostrategics also behind it when you look, for instance, at the way that the United States and Europe are trying to kill the influence of Huawei, etc. But we're still consuming an enormous quantity of resources coming from some of those countries, China, not to say the least. And I guess one of the key questions that has been popping up more and more is, do we want to be dependent on that kind of regimes? And of course, that means, and it's something that the Greens have been saying for a long time, we need a transition away from that one-sided economical model and really focus on efficiency and profit maximization. And well, I mean, the only way that that old economic model could really work is the fact that we outsourced a lot of our production from the rich countries, from the West, to those emerging ones. But what we were quite blind to, I think, is the damage that did to people and to planet. Not say the least, when it comes to labor conditions, for instance, cheap labor is of course key in this model. Even forced labor, which is a huge concern, especially from parts of China, as I'm sure you are aware. But at the same time, I think we were also too unaware or too blind to the job insecurity in Europe that was caused by that, and for a lot of regions was really detrimental. And I think now we are indeed a bit on a momentum where there's a lot of people, but also policy makers that see that we can't continue down this road. And we need to go to circular and regenerative economy. And the good thing is that it can actually indeed be very beneficial to our economy, to our job markets. And well, one of the terms that I put forward there is that we need a new social contract. I think one of the things that we can be quite proud of as Europe is our welfare states. I think it's very important from a social perspective. And of course, you know, it was based on a social contract between the workers and businesses. If we would have economic growth, then the spoils of that economic growth would be shared. But we see, of course, that, well, it's broken. We see a lot of poverty, we see a lot of precarity in Europe, even, you know, in such a rich region as we are. And the spoils have not been redistributed equally as should have been the case. And so, I mean, you see indeed those poverty numbers increasing, especially now, inflation, energy crisis. A lot of people are, well, at peril. They feel left out. A lot of regions actually have huge economical problems, I would say. And I think that the circular economy, repair, remanufacturing really could be an immense opportunity there. It can be an opportunity when it comes to creating those quality local jobs. It can also be an opportunity to team up with trade unions, with the power of workers, actually, that should not be underestimated. And together we could come to a more progressive redistribution, and that would be a new social contract. And so, you know, if we would really put the circular economy as a model first, we would have really a triple dividend. We could have, of course, massive efficiency gains and a lot of cost savings, which is very important when you look at it on the social side. A lot of people that won't be obliged to buy new products, and that's, of course, very good for their wallets. It's about strategic autonomy, as I said, from some of those regimes we don't want to be dependent on anymore, a more resilient economy, and it's really about that locally embedded employment. And I think, well, it's difficult sometimes coming from the ample committee to really come up with legislation on that, because we don't have a lot of legislative power making abstraction of, for instance, health and safety, which is something that I'm working on, and that is also relevant when it comes to circular economy, of course, because there are certain substances, and I think it was referred to in some of the previous panels, where you really need to be careful and you need to protect your workers. But, well, you know, on the same page, there's a lot of potential still that could be realized in some of the existing initiatives of the Commission, I would say. And, well, I think if we could really ramp up our ambitions when it comes to the Green Deal, when we make sure, for instance, when we are discussing the new eco-design regulation, etc., and we have really those minimum standards on circularity, we could really have a stimulus of those new business models focused on repair, focused, of course, on the lifetime extensions of products in a general fashion, as has been said by some of you earlier. And I think it's not so much a question of, well, more jobs in general. It's really a shift of the jobs, because indeed, and I mean, if you look at the ecological footprint as well, as was quoted as well, some of the jobs that we have now in waste incineration, in the extractive industries like mining, etc., well, those, of course, we might not have anymore, but we would have new ones, specifically on repair, etc. And of course, that would really require a just transition. You need to include the workers, you need to include trade unions to make sure that people actually know that it's not just a question of, well, getting rid of some of the more detrimental parts of our economy, but that there actually will be something better in place. And I guess one of the things that we could do more from an employment perspective, or from the committee that I'm working on, is really to focus on skills. It's one of the things that the Commission and Commissioner Schmidt himself has put forward as very important, and rightfully so. And I think we could still do a lot more when it comes to refurbishment, when it comes to repair, etc., to really put a focus on there, to put means in it, to put European means in it, to make sure that, well, a lot of people that might now be in the sort of jobs that perhaps don't have a future, they would get a future in these new repair and refurbishment jobs. One of the things that we also want to do, coming from the ample perspective, and that's really very linked to the study that was announced, is really to show that potential. And we want to do an INI report specifically on the link between the green agenda, so transition, Green Deal, and the potential of jobs and of quality jobs. And I think, well, the study that has been mentioned could be great to sort of give extra weight to that, but I'm sure that there's many other things there we could include to really show that these two perspectives need to be seen together. And so maybe in a nutshell, what do we need to look at when it comes to triggering the repair economy in our work in the Parliament? We have to look at cost, of course. We know indeed, and it's been mentioned, repair is very labor intensive. That can be a positive and a negative thing. It depends on how you look at it. But it is indeed a fundamental disadvantage towards, well, the economic model as we've seen it. And I guess one of the major things, but sadly that's more national competence, is really to have fiscal reforms. For instance, to make sure that labor indeed will be taxed less, which of course will make a huge difference in the labor cost. The same as, you know, initiatives that were mentioned when it comes to the Swedish example. Also, for instance, when it comes to fiscal, a lower VAT on repair could really help in making sure that this becomes a more fair model and a more fair competition. The design standards, for sure, that's what we will be working on when it comes to the eco-design regulation, really to have those requirements in there for every relative and important type of product, where we really want to prioritize circular vice recycling, which has not been the case. So really to have that hierarchy. To have the repair information accessible by default. And there, the new digital product passport, for instance, will be key, I think, and an important one. And of course, the right to know the level of repairability, and you know, the examples of France and of Belgium have been shown. And then a ban on greenwashing, of course, to make sure that consumers are indeed empowered. Just, well, it's very difficult to say a lot in a limited amount of time, but I'm sure, you know, within the questions we can go deeper into it.
Thank you very much, MEP Mathieu, for telling us how this links with all of your work in the European Parliament. While the audience maybe thinks about whether they have any questions for you, I definitely would like to pick up on something that several speakers said about the current energy and price crisis, and also the dependence that we have in Europe from materials that come from elsewhere and that are very difficult to mine. It's really a nightmare. And in this situation, I was asking myself, how is the second-hand market dealing with all of this? How is it holding up in this situation?
Is coming, but if we want to overcome the further issue in regards to raw materials, etc., second-hand goods are here for that. Basically, supply is here, basically, is in Europe, is in our drawers. Raw materials, products, spare parts, everything is already here. We just have to collect it, to repair it, and to reuse it. So it could be a good solution for all that crisis, and also for the purchasing power, because it's for electronic devices. I don't know for others, but for electronic devices, we have assessed that refurbished device is from 30 to 70% lower, at lower price than the new one. So it's very good for purchasing power. I don't know if anyone has other thing to do, but basically, second-hand market could be a solution also. And really, I think EU policymakers didn't see that for now, or at national level neither. We will talk a lot about energy crisis, but this is also maybe at more long term a good solution for all that issues.
Thank you very much. I was wondering whether there were questions from the audience. I can see two. Please go ahead.
I have a question for Sarah. When you look at the European community and the organization from very far away, it seems as if there is some kind of different goals going on. It's 2 years now since the European Parliament had a very good decision on repairs, and I think it was almost 98% or 99% of the Parliament members that voted for this. Now, 2 years later, we still don't really know if the Commission is a kind of a break on that, or trying to prolong the time it takes before what the Parliament decided to get into action. So, you being inside the motor there, can you tell us if there is are the Parliament and the Commission working on the same direction? Then there was another thing from your speech there that had me falling down on the ground. We have a problem here, which has been imposed on us by companies not taking into consideration the resources and the money that consumers have to use. And then you say that one of the solutions is that we have to lower the tax, which is one of the means we have to to make the people in Europe more equal and take out the inequality that has imposed by us by companies' salary structure. I couldn't believe my ears. I don't think that the workers should pay for the problems that the companies have put on us.
Okay, maybe that last question, I'm not sure if you understood me correctly. I think one of the problems is that right now labor is quite expensive because a lot of it is taxed. What we've been saying for such a long time is that you shouldn't put that high taxes on labor. You should put it on polluters. You should put it on the really wealthy, the multinationals. I mean, that's the tax shift that I'm talking about. That would actually mean that people would get a lot more money if they're doing a decent job. So, no, it's not like that at all.
It helped me a lot to hear you said that was because you wanted to put it somewhere else. Not
yes, of course.
Because what you said was just a lower tax. And, yeah.
No, a tax
it's
shift.
Not without problems, but it's policy.
No, it needs to be a tax shift, and for sure it needs to be on pollution and on big capital. No, when it comes to sort of the pace, I agree with you that it's going very slow, indeed. And well, what I can see coming from the Parliament, it is a lot of support, and more support. More and more people are indeed realizing the potential of repair, of circularity, and it's really nice to see. And this is new. I have to say, in the last couple of years, I would say, a lot of the colleagues that perhaps I wouldn't have thought would be an ally, and indeed, when it comes to the economical gains that can be found, that really helps. They are starting to see that. They are starting to see that this will actually create a lot of jobs, that it will create a lot of economical opportunity, and it's not just a question of climate change or trying to use less resources or saving the environment. It's much more. Is it going really slow? Yes, for sure. I think the Commission could speed it up a bit. And of course, we are doing the best we can coming from the Parliament in putting our whip out and really trying to get the process to go quicker. One of the things that often also frustrate me is the fact that the Commission works in silos. It's not because we have a Green Deal, it's not because we have a circular package that all the different entities of the Commission are going into the same direction. And that often creates also a lot of discussion within the Parliament, because of course you have different points of view and different committees that all have a say in legislation. But it's also often not very coherent. When we're talking about critical raw materials, for instance, on the one side, well, we've done a report specifically on that as a Parliament, where we really wanted as Greens to put circularity first, and for a big part, we managed to do that, to indeed show, you know, when it comes to the sourcing of those materials, there's actually a lot of them already in Europe, but often we are just shipping them out, or they are in drawers somewhere, or with companies that are not really using them. But when you look at the projections of the Commission in the need for all of these raw materials, they don't really take that into account. They also don't take into account the fact that perhaps other models might be better and, well, less dependent on those resources. I mean, for instance, if you want to replace every car right now in Europe that is running on fossils with an electric one, you're going to have a huge amount of resources needed. Of course, that's not what we should do. We should go to shared mobility. We should try and get more people on public transport, etc. So, I mean, it can be frustrating in the sense that you think on the one side, okay, finally there's a circular economy package and, you know, the Commission has gotten the message. But for instance, I will be very curious what the Commission will do with the announced Critical Raw Materials Act, for instance. Will that be focused on, and that's a bit what von der Leyen said in her speech, let's extract more in countries like Chile, in countries like Australia perhaps, or should it be, let's turn the model around and let's go to a circular one. And I mean, if you ask me, it's the second one, and that's what we will be fighting for.
There was a second question right behind.
Thank you. I am picking up from what you said about the social contract in Europe that needs to be remade. I have been reading the proposals that are right now for new directives being discussed. The point I want to make is that I feel very abandoned as a citizen in them. Why? Well, I continue telling more about those nightmare months with my ICT in the office. It was not just that I needed to pay an extra tax on the spare parts I was bringing, but suddenly, since the new launch of the Windows 11, I got a notification that no single machine in my office will keep working on Windows 11 because it's not supported. They are not supporting older processors. Then, just 1 month, 2 months later, all my Microsoft Office programs stopped working due to a new update by Windows. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe not. I have no resources to go to court against Microsoft. So how is the Commission expecting that the SMEs will have a market in which we are totally left alone to fight against giant multinationals? So I haven't seen any proposal to defend the interests of the citizens against the big companies, behind that you will have the right to defend yourself alone against them. So how do you want to build up in that social contract from the European Commission? Because the big companies have already broken that social contract, and if the proposal is that you have to defend by yourself, then I don't see any possibility. Thank you.
Not an easy question, but indeed, I think it needs to be part of it. And I mean, it's not something that the Commission is going to come up with for sure. And that's exactly why it's interesting to have a panel like this, where we are not just focusing on the environment, when we're not just focusing on the climate, when we're not just focusing on consumer rights, but also making that link with, for instance, trade unions, because I think that there's a lot of potential there that has perhaps not been tapped yet. There's a lot of allies in society that you can use to push for a just transition with these kind of labor rights included. And it's very sure that, you know, if you will leave it up to the Commission, we can wait a very long time. So I hope that gatherings like these can help, and that perhaps we could have even more of a convergence with those voices in society that are also fighting against social inequalities, that are fighting against poverty, that are fighting for workers' rights. And I think together we can be a lot stronger.
Maybe one last question from, I see one more actually that I had forgotten. You in red?
Hi, Alex Braley from Sustainable Public Affairs, and thank you very much for the presentations. Building a bit on the last question, I would appreciate your views on, we talked a little bit about standards. How can we ensure those actually work for the SMEs and some we've been talking about, given they tend to have a limited role in the process, and what else can we do beyond that, given that it might take a long time to get those standards in place and that the chances of success might not be on our side. Secondly, building a bit on that, how can we deploy strategically voices who champion the circular economy, like Back Market now, that do have a bit more economic weight, showing that circular economy can be a resource for job creation to deliver more ambitious outcomes? And maybe good to hear from Back Market themselves how they're taking to this role, because I guess you get a lot of interest now. Thank you very much.
Right, I'll start with that. And yes, as you said, one of the main problems we're facing with standards is that exactly the smaller and medium enterprises, because they have very limited resources, they cannot very easily afford to have a representative in all the relevant standardization bodies. And so a phenomenon we're facing very often is that these standards are rather built by the bigger players who can afford to actually invest the time and the resources to these mechanisms. So one thing we need as well is support exactly for the smaller and medium enterprises. Make sure they have the resources, the training, the funding in order to invest more easily sometime into sending their experts in the standardization setting bodies. And we will start to see as well that when standards are also, it's a cyclical process, right? Because when standards are a bit more inclusive, the rest of the SMEs also are more able to uptake them, right? Because they have developed by the SMEs for the SMEs. And so we will start to see multiplying effects as long as we are make sure to understand how strategic this area is for the right to repair, as well as for digital sovereignty more generally. And as long as there is political will, we will be able to have a lot of success. As I said, a lot of the top-tier standards in the world right now have been developed by the contribution of European experts. It's just that we do not make use of those standards.
And maybe for the second part, so if I understood well, how can we be, you know, as Back Market, how can we implement and foster other models like that and make them more numerous? And basically that's my work, that's my job as public affairs, not only, you know, asking for better laws about circular economy, but also sharing our views, our experiences through federations, associations, and communities such as the Right to Repair campaign, which we are a member of. And we are trying together, you know, to promote good models. what is working, what is not working, and what do we need together, because it's not only about having other models and jobs, but if there are other companies in that sector, would be more powerful in regards to policymakers to have power against manufacturers or other sectors that don't have interest in circular economy. So I know. Maybe it will lead to many success in many years, but that's basically what we are trying to do in the Right to Repair campaign, for example.
Thank you very much, Alexandre, for making advertisement for the campaign. That's a very, very good job. There is one question from the Commission, I see. That's interesting. Please go ahead, Ms. Taikova. For the live streamers, we're just figuring out how to give her a mic.
Thank you. I just wanted to react to one of the comments. I heard a comment, I'm not sure who made it, about a consumer who felt lonely and that he was not protected by EU law. That was Alberto. Well, I just wanted to react to that and to note that there is an important piece of EU legislation, recent EU legislation on representative action on behalf of consumers by qualified entities, which makes it much easier to defend consumer interests vis-a-vis large economic actors. So this issue has been addressed already. Also, in the current initiatives, the Empowering Consumers for the Green Transition initiative, for instance, there are some changes foreseen to the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive, which will introduce certain practices directly in the list of unfair practices by default, which will make it easier to address this kind of practices in the market, also by consumer authorities. So there is a lot of attention paid to this via different tools, either strengthening the consumer rights to defend themselves in court or facilitating the enforcement work of consumer protection authorities and other competent authorities to enforce consumer rights and legislation on the ground. It may take a bit of time until this comes into force, but there is work done on it, and hopefully it will facilitate the life of consumers even more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taikova, for the clarification. Indeed, time, I would say, time is of essence, and we have people in the room that have been advocating for this for over 10 years, and the planet is on fire. So I guess that really time is really the key word here. Maybe one very last question before we go to lunch. Ugo?
Yes, I have a question from an online participant asking what can be done on the skills agenda specifically.
I think the most important thing would be to really see this as an opportunity and to have specific programs that are really looking into how can we get more people active on the job market in those specific sectors as refurbishment and repair. Because of course we can make beautiful laws, but if we don't have the people to actually do it, then you're having an issue. And so these things really need to coincide. And I think that we need a lot more programs, honestly, specifically on these kind of skills and maybe reskilling as a priority to really make sure that those workers now working in certain sectors where we think, they should end at a certain point because they are very bad for the environment or because the working conditions are not up to standards, have an opportunity to seize this socioeconomic opportunity indeed. So I would say really dedicated programs and EU funds going into this and making sure that we have a match with legislation and with the potential on the job market.
Thank you very much for this. For this response. Thank you very much to all the speakers that contributed today, and also to all the participants that joined us, both here in Brussels and online. I would say, as a wrap-up, the job is definitely not done. We still have much to do. We still need a lot of support, because as you can see, we need to push EU institutions further, probably the Commission a little bit more than the Parliament. And just a few more info, because before we go to lunch, we are organizing, and I would say, you know why, a Right to Repair protest this afternoon. It's starting at 4 on Place René Cliquet, near Porte de Namur. I hope to see many of you there. After the lunch, we will go to a cardboard sign-making workshop. You can join that too. We can just leave all together, actually. And so we can keep going for the afternoon, and you are very warmly welcome to join the protest. Also, I know that many people in the room have tickets for Fixfest, of course, which is tomorrow and on Sunday. Even if you do not have a ticket for Fixfest, which is sold out, unfortunately, we invite you to join the Repair Cafe that we are organizing on Sunday afternoon. It's gonna take place from 2 to 5 p.m. at Atelier des Tanneurs in Marolles. You can bring your broken items and we will fix them. What is better than that? So thank you very much for joining us, and let's go have lunch. Thank you.